What's up, and welcome back to Talking Nutrition. Today I wanted to change things up a little bit and give you a little look behind the scenes, if you will, of our nutrition coaching program. Now, what we've done recently was a change. So we used to do these group calls every single week where it was basically Q&A. We talk about topics submitted by our clients, maybe struggles they run into. Sometimes we go over their periodization plans, etc. But I wanted to change it up, and I really wanted to double down on the education side of things. So what I'll be sharing with you today is a recording of our most recent office hours call, where we dove into all things muscle gain, bulking, maintenance, the importance of maintenance, but also kind of like the downsides of chronic undereating. Basically, what happens when people consistently just try diet after diet after diet, and kind of what it does to the body. And most importantly, like how you can, fix things, for lack of a better term, right? How you can restore things, I should maybe say. Because let me tell you this, you might be wondering, like, how do people look jacked and toned, and how do they build the muscle? They actually look like they work out, right? It's not because they consistently undereat. It's because they nourish the body, they spend time at maintenance, they build muscle, and that's really the name of the game. If you want to fix things and you've been spinning your wheels and you've really tried just about everything to lose fat and you have not been able to lose weight or keep it off, you may want to focus a little bit less on dieting. And to be honest with you, that's how we get people results. That's how we get people to lose weight and actually keep it off, look like they work out, right? They build muscle, lose body fat after sometimes 10 plus years of spinning their wheels. And I can say that with confidence because I've seen it over and over again. So if there's one thing you can take away from today's podcast, it's going to be a little bit of a lengthier episode, is that you should not be living in a calorie deficit, that you need more time at maintenance, maybe even a dedicated muscle gaining phase. And as much as I cannot give any guarantees because I cannot do the work for you, I can almost promise you that when you spend more time at maintenance, your results will be a million times better. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. And if you need more help with this stuff, if you really feel like you're stuck, reach out to me. I'll make sure to drop a link in the show notes. We have our one-on-one coaching program. We even have a group coaching program these days. So whatever you're looking for, I'm pretty sure we can help you out. So make sure to check out the link in the show notes and let's get into the episode. So first of all, Samantha commented health benefits of bulking and how it looks for men versus women. Right, cool. A lot of good stuff to unpack there. She also posted something related to that, which I want to touch on as well, which is I kind of took both and I kind of turned this into, today's topic. So she then also posted, I'm in the last week of my cut and I'm thinking more and more about maintenance, about my maintenance season, which I have planned for the rest of the year, which, by the way, let me just stop right there, right? So we just have, if we had a fat loss phase, we're going up soon, right? Very soon to maintenance, which for most people is a very weird time. It's a difficult time. It's also where the magic happens. I will say that there's a reason we get the people the results after years of struggling, right? It's not because of the cutting, like it's what we do before and after, especially after, because we know, like worldwide, yes, there's an, obesity issue, right? And it's very common, but it's not per se like a weight loss issue. It's that weight loss maintenance, it's keeping it off. Because to be honest with you, we could put you on any very strict diet and you'd be losing weight. But what happens after? We all know that, right? So going back to what Samantha says. So we had her cut, last week. We're going into maintenance. We're going to bring her up in steps. We're not just jumping there. We're going to do a reverse. But okay. She says, I have that plan for the rest of the year. Now, why do we do that? Like, what do you think we do that, right? It has a reason. We're going to get into that today. So, because of events, happening in the upcoming months, and this is where periodization comes in, where, yes, we look at your results, but we also look at what's important for you. Again, I mentioned this. I talked to Anik today in the group on her posts, where I asked, like, hey, for example, with December, most people want to be celebrating Christmas. We probably don't want to be in a deficit by then, right? Because we already want to make sure that, hey, we have social settings, we have that in check, depending on what season you're in. Hey, we're going to either make sure that we stick to, for example, our deficit, or we plan for breaks, whether that's a refeed day, a couple of refeed days, a full-on diet break, or actual maintenance phase, right? I'm talking like either days, weeks, or months. We want to plan for that. And that's why I do this with everyone. That's why I have everyone build out a plan. And that's why I help you with that too for 12 months. Because I don't just want to look in the short term, right? Hey, okay, you want to lose weight? Okay, cool. Here's your diet, Like, no, what happens afterwards? What do we do when it's Christmas, right? So Samantha, we talked and we built her plan out, and we chose to do maintenance for the rest of the year. Also knowing, and this is a big important part that she mentioned, she says, I'm realizing that in the past, basically in my life before Johan, she says, my focus was always on weight loss, and I never paid attention to maintenance and what I can do during a maintenance season. So think about that for a sec, right? So for so long, there's been focus on weight loss, weight loss, weight loss, diets, right? We're not really spending a lot of time nourishing the body, feeling good, building the muscle, etc. That's why people struggle, right? That's why we do things differently. That's why we get people the results. Again, because we spend a lot of time not dieting. That's where the magic happens. As weird as it might sound, especially for new people here, right? As weird as it might sound, your success depends on how well you do maintenance, not how hard you go cutting. Yes, there's a time and place where we want to go hard and do the work. But what you do at maintenance is by far the most important, my opinion, right? Because cutting, anyone can put you on a restrictive diet, get you to lose a whole bunch of weight, but what happens afterwards, right? And that's the thing. That's why people struggle. That's why you continue to spin your wheels, because we try diet after diet, never paying a lot of attention to maintenance, what we can do then, which again, like that's where the magic happens. And that's even more of a reason to spend the rest of this year eating enough. And that's not an easy thing. And especially if you think about this, right? If we're literally talking about years of trying to lose weight, it's understandably difficult, right? To get out of that dieting mindset and go into eating enough. And that's why eating more is scary. But guess what? We had Samantha eat more and she's actually lost weight, right? And there's been multiple people here in this group who've gone through that same experience. But I will say this, and you'll hear me say this over and over again, but when we go into that phase for the first time after trying to diet for a very long time, it's a scary thing. You're going to have a lot of doubt. You're going to be worrying if you're going to, maybe lose or gain some more weight again. Like, no, it's a matter of like, hey, we are going to do this in controlled way. Like when I set your targets, like, don't worry, like we're not just going to do this, without thinking about stuff. But we want to do it in a controlled fashion, right? But it's one of those things where I could tell everyone over and over again how important it is to eat more, go to maintenance, those kind of things. But you're not going to notice until you go through that actual experience of bring your food up a little bit, trusting the process, and then after a couple of weeks, and that's the downside. Like, it takes a couple of weeks for you to really start to notice, right? And I've seen Danny go through that, multiple people here, where it's a little bit of hesitation in the beginning. We increase food, is like, like it's scary. But guess what? 2 weeks down the road, right? That initial bump of weight kind of goes back down again. People start to lose more body fat, feel better, get better workouts, PRs, right? And then as we bring them back up to maintenance, they just start to feel better and better and better, right? And that's what we want to get you to. Now, she continues here and she says, my question then is, during maintenance, what is achievable? Can I still try to tone? Can I work on lifting heavier? Can I still lose fat? What else is possible? So a lot of very good questions, which is why I wanted to add this post kind of like to the topic, because I think we can tie this all together. And it also kind of ties into something I talked about with Anik as well. So let's see, because there's a bunch of different sides to this coin, really. So first of all, so if you think about this, what do people who actually look jacked, right? So the people who actually look like they work out, you know what I mean, right? Like, what the hell do they do? Like, how do they do that? And then I'm talking about natural, right? Because there's a lot of influencers out there who do steroids. I need to mention this. There's a lot of unrealistic expectations out there. So we do want to be aware of that. One sec. A little bit of water. Now, what do people do, right? What do people do to actually look jacked? How do they maintain that, right? It's not by dieting all the time. It's not by under eating all the time. Let's first talk about like the benefits of muscle. It's for sure going to play into looking leaner. Obviously, right? If we have more muscle on the body, it's more to show. That needs to be said. And this is where the term toned comes from, kind of, toned or lean or jacked, whatever you want to call it, right? Definition. It's not just losing weight, and that's the thing. We need to step away from I want to lose weight and move a little closer towards I want to lose body fat and I want to build muscle. Because if you want to look toned or lean, jacked, whatever you want to call it, that is what we're going to be doing. Building muscle, losing body fat. And they both play into looking leaner. Now, wanted to also show you guys something. I'm going to look it up in the meantime because it's an older blog that I wrote. I have to look it up. But you often hear, right? It's, my metabolism is not what it used to be, those type of things. Usually, it's not the age. Let me pull this up real quick for you. See if I can share my screen. Does your metabolism slow down when you get older? We're not going to dive into this, but I want to show you something. Here's the thing. You see here? Let me see real quick. There we go. Between 20 and 60, there is no decline in your metabolic rate due to age. So I'll repeat that. Due to age, there's no metabolic decline between your 20 and 60th year. And even after that, it only is going to slowly go down. Now, you might wonder, right, how, like, what did they base this on? Because, everyone's so different with lifestyle, those type of things. This is when adjusted for lean mass and total body weight. Here's the thing, right? Usually, so why do people struggle, right, with a slower metabolism? We're going to tie this back into muscle, remember. We're not going to switch topics. I know I'm kind of like that, but not today. Look, why do people struggle with a slower metabolism as they get older? It's a decrease in activity. It's a decrease in muscle mass, pretty often combined with the frequent diet attempts, right? Because we're not really nourishing the body, feeding it up, right? It slows the metabolism down. That's the biggest thing. And you even see in this blog here, right? I mentioned exercise, staying active, also outside of the gym here, right? For those reasons, this is why we stay active, for health, right? Eating enough protein. Also there, let me just actually tie this into this. As you get older, your body is going to require more protein to do the same amount of work. Guess why I have pretty much everyone in this group eat more protein? Not just to build muscle, right? For many reasons, satiety, etc. But especially here, right? If we know, hey, we're getting a little older, we got to get that in. More protein, getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep, managing stress, etc. Right? Managing stress, big one. We're going to get back into that too. But okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. Main takeaway here, right? We can't blame it on age. We know that it's linked to muscle. So that being said, that's one of those reasons. We want to build the muscle, not just to look leaner. And yes, we're going to look leaner. We want to build the muscle just to be healthy and age well, if that makes sense. And it's going to keep your metabolism in a good spot. It's not that when you build muscle, all of a sudden you're going to have, hundreds of calories on top of your maintenance where, all of a sudden you can eat 4,000 calories. There are people like that. But don't expect that, right? That it's going to be that much of a difference. Like, there's going to be a little bit more, but either way, you're going to avoid that metabolism from slowing down over time. You got to keep that muscle, which, by the way, becomes more and more difficult to build. It's not impossible. I've seen people, 50 years old, 60s, build a good amount of muscle. It's still possible, right? But it becomes more difficult. So it's our job to keep moving, going to the gym, whatever form that is. And hey, maybe we're not the biggest fans of resistance training always. Okay, cool. Let's at least do it for the reason that we get older, a healthier, stronger way then. You know what I mean? Because it is worth it. And it's a bit of a trade-off sometimes for people who don't like lifting. But hey, you can also get into it. And especially once you see the results, It might just get addictive. Sorry. But okay, so it's gonna improve the metabolism. It's gonna be good for your hormones also. Now here's the cool thing too. It's gonna play into your immune system. You're gonna be more resilient. One of the main issues when people are old, right? It's falling over, not being able to get up, or even worse, like breaking a hip. A lot of people die actually then, and that's serious shit. And not just that, like let's even think just well-being, like being able to run around with the kids or your grandkids or whatever, right? Being able to climb a tree if you want to, just being able to like play, just do stuff, like do fun shit. You know what I mean? Isn't that like what we want to keep doing? And that's stuff that we often don't think about. And a lot of people in this group, including myself, we don't think about the long term. We think, I want to look jacked, I want to build the muscle, I want to lift the weights. Yes, all that stuff is great. But think long term, right? When you're 60, 70, 80 plus. That's also one of the reasons you're building the muscle, because you're still going to be strong and healthy, right? That's what you're working towards down the road. So keep that in mind too. Benefits of muscle also, insulin sensitivity, right? So you're going to be able to utilize nutrients better, carbohydrate better, right? Now, okay, so there's a lot of benefits to having more muscle on the body outside of just looking better. You know what I mean? Metabolism, hormones, resiliency. Let's now also talk about the downsides of chronic undereating, chronic dieting, right? I want to talk about this. There's a difference between people who are actually in a calorie deficit for years, right? Or are actually under eating, right? Because at some point you're not in a deficit anymore. There's a difference between under eating all the time and thinking that you're under eating. And this needs to be mentioned, but there's a lot of people who think they're under eating, but because it's also unsustainable, it's combined with binge eating, sometimes weekends, sometimes in between crazy diets. And you just kind of end up thinking, hey, I'm working really hard, I'm cutting my calories, I'm cutting my favorite foods, cutting sugar, whatever it is, right? But then because it's so difficult, we tend to overcompensate, right? Binge, a lot of times with the keto stuff, right? Low carb, intermittent fasting, right? I'm not against those approaches, but there's a lot of research pointing out that those approaches at least increase that risk of binge eating and an unhealthy relationship with food, so that is an issue there. So that being said, whether we're really looking at chronic under eating or trying the diet all the time, and because it's unsustainable, we just kind of we end up actually not being in a deficit, but we binge our way back to maintenance all the time. I kind of call this shitty maintenance because we're not really just eating at a good level where you just feel good. No, instead we're restricting and then we're overcompensating. So we might as well just not try the diet, you know what I mean? And then just put you at maintenance and feel way better, right? But okay, I want to touch on one thing later if we have time. Putting a note here. Cool. Okay, so downsides of chronic under eating. First of all, a calorie deficit is a big form of stress to the body. It's not going to be great for you, right? The body doesn't see a difference between under eating, right? Or maybe stress from work or traffic or extreme temperatures, and the list goes on. This could be environmental toxins. It could be nutrient deficiencies, overeating, under eating. The list goes on, right? It's like an endless list. But together with maybe sleep deprivation or disrupted circadian rhythm, maybe alcohol abuse, for example, under eating is a very, very big form of stress to the body. It's not a good thing. What's it going to do is it's a threat kind of like to the system. And it sounds weird, but we want to think about this from an evolutionary standpoint. It's taking us away from being safe. The body only gives a shit about two things, really. First of all, keeping you alive, kind of important because, right, the species need to survive. And second, for that same reason, procreation. That's the only thing the body really cares about. Now, dieting, right, under eating is a big threat to that, to being able to survive, to being able to procreate. And what happens is in the beginning, and this is also, by the way, why people need to keep adjusting when you go through a diet, right? In the beginning, you might cut calories and your body, you start to lose weight, right? Because that's how we survive. We just burn a little bit of our fat stores. Okay, cool. Stored energy, right? Now, at some point, right, because you don't just keep losing, at some point, the body adapts. It's going to be burning fewer calories. I mean, part is because you are a lighter person, so you need fewer calories. But on top of that, there's metabolic adaptations. Sounds very scary. It's just a normal thing. We can reverse that too. But okay. At some point, you would have to go a little bit lower, etc. That's only during a diet when we actually do that on purpose. We want to have you lose weight before we go back, right? When we're dieting, it's get out, get the hell out again. We'll touch on this too, because I see too much kind of like fucking around during a cut, because we want to be too flexible. No, we want to be a little bit more balanced at maintenance. But when we cut, we want to make it work, or we want to make it count, because when we go into a cut for 8, 12, whatever, 16 maybe weeks, you want to get it done because it's only temporary, and that's the thing. Now, what happens if we stay on low calories? Because that's the thing. Going on low calories is okay. It's not okay to stay there. We're going to see more and more adaptations. Your metabolism is slowing down. You want to think about your phone, right? So we all have iPhones these days or similar, but there's the battery saving mode, right? Where the GPS turns off and you might have some functions that don't really work and those type of things. You want to think about that too. Like your body is kind of something similar where, sex hormones are not really priority anymore. Think about, for example, bodybuilders, right? To give you an extreme example, who get on stage super lean. A lot of women lose their menstrual cycle there, right? A lot of men, super low testosterone, like low libido for that reason. They get to such low caloric intakes as well as body fat levels that the body is kind of like, well, we don't really need to put any energy towards these sex hormones because we barely get even, enough food for you to survive, right? So again, evolutionary standpoint actually makes a lot of sense here. But okay, so over time, right? So sex hormones kind of go out the door. Cortisol, like stress hormone, goes way up, right? Our hunger, satiety hormones, like pretty much everything, like hormone-wise, kind of goes out of whack. You know what I mean? And it's not a great place to be in. Our biofeedback also starts to suck. If we, once again, and tying this back to the question, looking toned, etc., toning up. If we want to build some muscle, if we want to look leaner, that means that you also want to, right? First of all, give your body the energy to do the work, and then also the raw materials to do, to actually build the muscle. Guess what doesn't happen when you're under eating? Exactly that. Now, I will say this: when you are new, you're new to lifting, etc. Maybe we increase your protein intake. That's a little bonus there. But if we're completely new and we get you on a resistance training program, you are very likely to build some muscle, but it's very unlikely after the initial kind of like newbie gains that you would get. So that being said, there's not going to be a lot of muscle building because, again, your body needs energy to do the work. Muscle is a very expensive tissue to have on the body also. So yes, it takes energy to build it, but to maintain it. Plus you need the raw materials once again. So why would the body think, okay, hey, we're under eating, we're barely getting any. Okay, let me now just, build this expensive tissue. Like, no, it doesn't really want to. It doesn't give a shit about you looking leaner. We can achieve that. The body's really good at adapting, right? We can work with it. But we can say, hey, we want to build the muscle, look leaner, but then not, feed the body and lift the weights. It's not going to happen, Another issue too, right? Downsides of chronic undereating is nutrient deficiencies, very common also. Because remember too, we often talk about calories and macros, but there's also micronutrients that are not optional, but essential. Meaning you do need them for proper function and, survival basically. So that being said, if we consistently undereat, there's also a bunch of micronutrients that may be very low, right? Or that we're already deficient in. So we also there, for that reason, want to pay attention to those micronutrients, trying to bring them up, especially during maintenance, really making sure that we still keep that, that 80-20, because we still mostly want to get the minimally processed foods. So you also replenish those micronutrients. Now, deficiencies can cause tons of issues. Then again, getting into health, immune function, metabolism, hormones, etc. If we don't get our micronutrients in, even though it's technically a detail when it comes to your physical results, we're going to run into issues. Now, undereating also doesn't really allow us to reach a balance or state of balance, homeostasis. Homeostasis is where the body wants to be. It's that baseline that we would like to just feel safe, right? That's what the body wants. You get enough energy. You are not really on a battery saving mode that I mentioned, right? It's not really worrying about these hormones are or the muscle, I don't really want to build this, or we're in constant threat because there's not enough nutrients coming in. Like, no, the body wants to feel safe, and it only really happens if you get to your actual maintenance. This is something too that we got to remember. We don't get to decide what our maintenance is. The body does. And that's an issue because, that's not an issue per se, but it's an issue when we start to say, hey, we're used to, let's call it 1,200 calories, which is a topic that comes back over and over again. I've seen that so many times, but I've seen people come from 1,200 calories, which is super fucking low. It's not enough to feed a toddler, right? If that's like maintenance in quotes. I've seen people from coming to me at 1,200 calories, we're trying to bring them up and having a hard time eating enough, because that's what we're used to do, right? But then again, right, that's also why we are currently in the state that we are in. Under eating, there's more wrong than right for you, than good for you, right? It's long term, right? It's not a good thing. And the more we keep under eating, the more difficult it's going to be to get out of the dieting mindset, to actually be okay feeding the body up, right? Feeling good. Now, with that energy saving mode, once again, metabolic adaptations, we don't have to worry about that. We just want to respect that so that we can go back to maintenance and restore and replenish and just feel good for once and build the muscle. So let's now get into the importance of maintenance. Getting out of the dieting mindset, like that's probably the most important one right now. If we come from under eating, and I promise we're going to tie this back into muscle gain, but it needs to be mentioned. It all kind of goes hand in hand, and I got to talk about this. So getting out of the dieting mindset, right? I can teach you guys over and over again why we should be at maintenance and why muscle is important and why we do bulks and those type of things. But at the end of the day, like, even just the fact that you don't think about that skill going down nonstop every fucking day, that is enough reason to get out of a cut and be at maintenance for the time being. Because reality is that we are not going to be dieting forever. And that's such a issue that I see in the space, is that that's the only focus. And, as Samantha said, hey, before this program, she was only focused on weight loss, which is kind of crazy if you think about this, because if we do this right, which, by the way, I know how to do this right. If you guys show up and you do your check-ins, right, and you ask your questions and you work with me, you communicate, right, I can walk you through that. I can show you. I know how to do this shit. And I can say that with confidence because I've seen people do this. I've seen so many people overcome their issues, right? But you do have to show up for it. But okay. I kind of lost it there for a sec, but getting out of the dieting mindset is so important. We need to get out of that. I've seen a lot of people struggle with eating more, way more than, the dieting itself. Because when you diet, right, you think, I have this goal, right? I'm chasing that weight loss goal. And I know what it's like. I've been there, right? And I've seen people get excited, and I know, right? I know it's easier said than done. But then it's great. We're working towards that goal. We see that scale going down, right? And we have the goal of, hey, I want to reach that weight. Great, yeah. We'll get you there, no doubt. But reality is like, we're not going to keep doing that. You know what I mean? If we do this right, that's what I was going to say. Excuse me. Now, if we do this right, we should really be able to get most people to their goal weight in 1 to 2 cuts. And it's very difficult to say that as a general statement, but 1 to 2 cuts for a lot of people is going to do the trick. So we get in, we get the hell out, we eat enough again, we restore our metabolism, we take a break. When we cut, right, you want to make it count. We don't want to fuck around for a full year trying to lose weight and not seeing the results. No. What we do here is we make it work. When we cut, we make sure that we stick to that deficit, right? Again, easier said than done. We're going to have our roadblocks, but we need to work through that together. But okay, once we get that done, we go back to maintenance. We get that biggest chunk of weight loss out of the way, which really should just be one and done. That's the goal with our program. We get you the results, and then you're done with the weight loss, and we can forget about the weight loss. And that being said, we need to practice not dieting as well, because down the road, you're going to spend way more time not dieting, right? You want to be healthy. You want to build the muscle. You want to enjoy your workouts. You want to enjoy actually having energy at the gym, during the day, right? In bed, at work, whatever, right? That doesn't really happen if we keep under eating, like it does happen at maintenance, though. You know what I mean? So again, importance of maintenance. Most importantly, we just want to get out of the dieting mindset, because there's going to be a point where you are not going to chase that weight loss goal. And we want to be okay with that. Not just that. We got to restore metabolism, restore those hormones, give your body a break. And hey, if there is more weight loss to be done, cool. That's cool, right? We'll plan another weight loss phase, but not without maintenance in between. The reason most people fail to keep it off is because they don't spend any time going to maintenance in a gradual fashion, like a step-by-step way, going back there, learning how to also then again eat more again, learning how to not just stop tracking, etc., because that's also something people do, right? I lost the weight, okay, I'm done. Like, no, you're not going to be done. We still need to get you to maintenance. We are still going to be tracking, and I've seen people do amazing by fully just being dedicated to that reverse diet, and I've seen people fall off because they do not do the reverse diet. They don't take it serious, and they don't take maintenance serious. But I can promise you that if you do, that you'll be able to keep it off without that unwanted weight regain. But I'm going to say this too, right? It's not just, restoring metabolism, hormones, etc., feeling good, right? Restoring biofeedback. This might even tie into gut health, into other issues, functional issues, where with that big stressor that we talked about, right? That calorie deficit, we might actually want to remove that, right? That big stressor, to fix things. When we're looking into sex hormones, those type of things. I have a client currently who really wanted to lose some body fat before summer, earlier this year. We addressed a couple of things, and we know she doesn't really have a regular cycle, comes from a lot of dieting also. Some issues where, hey, energy is super low. I'm suspecting a little bit of some thyroid issues there, high stress, a whole bunch of stuff, right? I had to bring the bad news of, hey, we're not going to be dieting. We need to fix this, and we even removed cardio, right? And she really wants to try CrossFit. I told her, hey, right now we actually don't want to do that, because as much as I do like that approach for some people, and it's a great sport, if we are dealing with functional issues and stress is high already, it is a very stressful form of training, type of training, which we want to respect. So right now, we're just trying to manage stress. We're trying to keep it as low as possible as we work through the sex hormone issue and the potential other functional issues. Okay. That being said, right, removing that calorie deficit is a big one right there, which is also why I kind of hate that on social media these days, it's all about calorie deficit. Like, yes, that's true when we want to lose the weight, but we're not going to stay there, right? It's not that the one thing that's going to get you the results. Like, no, we want to spend more time not dieting. And if anything, you want to spend more time at maintenance than actually being in a cut. Or at least you want to even be, even bulking, right? Spending time actively putting on muscle more than cutting. I will say that, like cutting, and there is even research to show that it's actually very beneficial to be in a deficit from time to time. But I'm not talking, right, chronic undereating. I'm not talking having to lose weight 10, 20, 30 kilos. Like I'm talking not a little bit of caloric restriction every now and then actually has been shown to be beneficial. But then again, right, don't take it out of context, because as soon as it turns into kind of like chronically undereating, we run into issues again. And then it's not going to be a beneficial thing anymore. So a lot of good stuff, right? So how do we get people the results after 10 plus years of being stuck sometimes, right? I've had multiple people be like, I've tried just about everything. Now I'm eating more and I'm losing body fat for the first time in years, right? I think recently, a couple of weeks ago, I remember got a check-in. Hey, I'm at the lowest or the smallest pants or pant size in 20 years. How crazy is that? That's 20 years, right? I'm gonna give the secret, to you, and it's not the diet. It's not the food choices that we make. You know what I mean? And if you're watching this and you're experienced already, like you already know, you've gone through these phases. But the magic is not in the cut, right? Anything works. You could do fucking whatever you want to do, right? There's going to be better tools and worse, right? But technically, and I do not recommend this, so right? I do not recommend this, but technically, you could lose weight on carnivore, vegan, keto, low carb, low fat, paleo, Weight Watchers, like whatever it is, right? What else? Raw vegan, right? There's just so many diets out there, pescatarian, right? Like it's not about that. We want to put you in a deficit. Yes, we want to lose the weight. Yes, we want to keep protein high, food quality, etc. Right? Maybe also, by the way, there, right? Clean eating, and if it fits your macros, you could lose the weight however the hell you want. I will say this, that we do it better because we actually make sure that you do not feel like you're starving, right? You get your protein. We focus on food volume. We do 90-10 instead of 80-20, right? But it's not really about the cut. It's not about the calorie deficit. I'm definitely mentioning this, especially for people who are about to go through this or may in a couple months go through a maintenance phase. That's where the magic happens. It's what happens after a cut. It's what happens when you actually start to feed your body, giving you the energy that you need, the raw materials, like I said, to actually build that strong body. Because again, we all want a strong body, but all of a sudden, when it comes to eating more, it becomes like, I kind of don't want to, right? Like, no. Maintenance is the place to be. Like maintenance is the thing that's going to allow you to unlock that next level, like fat loss and being able to keep it off too, and just actually feeling good. It's easier said than done, especially if weight loss is the goal. And a lot of people think that, I'm not chasing the weight loss goal, so I must be kind of like, maybe not stuck, but kind of like, not doing anything in quotes. But no, you are actually doing a lot. What you are doing throughout a maintenance phase is restoring the body in many ways, right? Taking the stressor off the body. It's better for your hormones. You actually get enough nutrients, also micronutrients. We may be replenishing those. Your metabolism is in a better place, right? But you are also, for that reason, preparing yourself down the road to potentially do another cut if you wanted to. And the longer you are at maintenance, the better your body is going to respond to a calorie deficit. And that needs to be said as well, right? So let's flip the whole thing from trying to diet all the time to actually nourishing the body, feeling good, maintaining, maybe even building some muscle, and then do a cut here and there, right? Let's do that. And guess why we work with people, 12, 24 plus months sometimes? It's because we want to think long term. And I've seen a lot of new people kind of get into this, being like, I want to do a cut for 4 weeks and then reverse and then bulk for 4 weeks, etc. Like, and I always tell people like, hey, that's cool, and I see what we're getting at, and I know I can understand what your goals are, and you know, of course, I have you guys look into the trainings, right, about maintenance, the seasons of nutrition, calorie deficit, bulking, reverse dieting. I teach you guys to then see, hey, like, do you understand and do you think you have a good idea of, hey, what the rest of the year is going to look like? But most of the time, with most people, I'm like, okay, cool, like it looks good, but then I extend pretty much every phase, right? Especially maintenance. Because, for example, if you're cutting for 12 weeks, you're not going to be in maintenance for 2 weeks and then cut for another 14, like, no. There needs to be a lot of time, building muscle, whether it's a bulk, whether it's maintenance, etc. It's an exit strategy. Like, that's the shit that's so important. We got to do that transition. For the most part, it's going to be a reverse diet. I've taken people from a cut back to maintenance. We kind of jump, usually in a couple steps, but I like the reverse diet because it's just been shown to get such good results. And especially if you're fine, you know what I mean? And your biofeedback is in a good place. And, we can just kind of like work gradually towards maintenance. It pays off, like, I know it's a process, it's a difficult process, but it helps, you know what I mean? It helps you transition from cutting to eating enough. It allows you to also see, hey, what happens if I make small changes? And again, it's that phase or season where when you give that time and effort and you go through it and you trust the process and you've seen after 1-2 weeks what happens to your body, then you're usually like, oh, okay, now I get it now. You know what I mean? And then you're fine with the additional, weeks after that. Now, how to look jacked? Now, how to look jacked and toned, right? What is toning? Talked about this earlier. It's building the muscle and losing the fat. It's not just being lighter. Guess what happens if we just want to be lighter? You're just going to look lighter. Exactly that. This is what happens when people are a little bit more stubborn when it comes to resistance training, it comes to lifting weights, because we want to keep doing the cardio. Don't get me wrong, cardio is important, but for body composition, it kind of sucks. It's pretty fucking terrible for body composition. It's not negative, I will say that, but if we want to improve body composition, like, that's not the way to go. We want to build the muscle. If we want to look toned, right? Because that was part of the question. We want to put on muscle, which brings me to kind of like the initial suggestion for this topic, right? The bulking. And I've even thought of changing this in my sheet for you guys, from bulk to lean gaining phase. But let's just call it what it is. Like, a bulk, right, is just a period where you're going to actively put on muscle and we're going to gain some weight. And then afterwards we can cut, right? Do I prefer the term lean gaining? Yes. I do think it's a little bit more, it sounds a little less scary maybe for most people. But hey, right, if it's about how things sound, okay. But either way, now I do understand. So what's the goal with the bulk? It's not just to gain a whole bunch of weight in no time. It's not just, eat more and, just do a dirty bulk and just eat whatever the hell you want. Like, no, that's not what it is. What we want to do, when we go into a bulk, we want to make sure that you gain as much muscle as possible without, or at least while minimizing, sorry. So let me say this again. The goal with the bulk is to gain as much muscle as possible while minimizing how much fat you gain throughout that process. Here's the cool thing. When you control your calorie surplus in this case, which, by the way, in the beginning, it's going to take some figuring out, but okay, as we increase food and we do that in a controlled fashion, right? Again, I'm not just going to adjust your targets and you're going to see a whole bunch of gain. Like, no, like, we want to be smart about this. Once we find out that sweet spot, we just want to control that rate of weight gain. And you're going to be able to put on a good amount of muscle without really gaining a whole bunch of body fat. I do want to say this too, though. There will be some fat gain over time. But here's the thing. It's actually easier to lose it than, what comes on as you go through that lean gaining phase. And I think as well that in this group right now, or even our one-on-one people, if you are not very experienced with lifting weights and you were to now go out of a cut in a maintenance bulk, you would really you get on a workout program, you pick one of the ones that we have. And by the way, we're going to keep adding monthly, but okay. You pick a workout program, you dedicate at least 6 weeks to that, right? Preferably longer, or you do a couple blocks or whatever, like a couple cycles. But either way, you start lifting weights, you get into a bulk, dedicated muscle gaining phase. I think a lot of you guys are going to respond very well and are going to see very, very minimal fat gain. Why is that? I've seen most people, right, not actually push close enough to failure or train with proper technique. And that's where maintenance is a great time, because also going back to Samantha's question, she says, during maintenance, like what's achievable? Can I still try a tone? Can I work on lifting heavier? Yes, this is where you're going to have your fuel, right? Your muscle glycogen stores are being topped off again, right? You're now going to have actual energy to build more muscle, to fuel your training, to also recover better, right? So this is absolutely a great season to focus on your training. Now, what's achievable? I mean, as for weight, like weight is not going to say the exact same, but you want to move away from that weight goal, right? The goal is not to lose further anymore or to gain or whatever, at least at maintenance. It's going to be staying stable. But that goes for maintenance. Going back to bulk, in that case, right, we're just going to be controlling that rate of gain, which, by the way, for most people is going to be between 0.25 and 0.5% per week. So that's really slow. Could you go faster? Yes, you could. Do I recommend that to most people? I don't, actually. Why is that? Because again, there is a little bit of fat gain, at least when you're bulking, and that does start to play tricks on your mind. And we've all gone through that, right? Where we get a little too critical, towards ourselves. And I was just talking to someone about this too today. When we're cutting, we think we look tiny and, like skinny fat, whatever. And then when we, bulk, and we bulk for fucking 2 days, we feel fat. It's like the brain like playing tricks on us, we're always our own worst critics. And I will say this because I dedicated a full year. I actually dedicated 14 months in 2020, early 22, 14 months to muscle gain, 14 months of gaining weight with a couple maintenance blocks in between. But okay, right? I gained a lot. That was also body fat. It was uncomfortable. I did not feel very confident in terms of like take my shirt off, for example, or look in the mirror, those type of things. If I look at the photos now, you can also really see it in my face, right? And you'll sometimes see it when I repost some of my reels. You'll see them a little more chunky. It's a trade-off, And again, I push it very long, 14 months, very long time. I will say this: once I lost that body fat, it's 1,000% worth it. But okay, most people are not going to go that long. I do understand. Okay, how long should you go? I want to say at least preferably 3 to 4 months, because it's going to take time. I just mentioned the 0.25 and the 0.5% of weight gain per week. When you go faster, like anything faster, you're just going to gain more body fat. And that's a thing that I see people, do when they think, oh, I'm going to do a dirty bulk. Okay, I'm just going to eat a whole bunch of, food, and I'm just going to, get the calories in. Like, yeah, it's fine to have a little bit more flexible foods, and it's okay, right? As long as you still maintain that 80-20, at least, I think. Excuse me. Here's the thing too. Gaining more weight does not mean you are gaining more muscle. When you go too fast, you will be gaining more and more body fat. And that's the mistake people make. But let me tell you this, right? If you do it right, maintenance, or let's start with bulking. If you do bulking right, you can mostly put on muscle with very minimal body fat. And the cool thing then is that not only do you have more muscle to show once you reveal that, because for an extended period of time you were not in a calorie deficit, you've been really feeding your body, feeding your metabolism. Guess what happens when you do a cut? You're going to respond super well. Now, for a bulk, like what's doable, I mean, again, you could push it really far. I like to go with at least maybe 3 to 4 months for most people. 1 to 2, like it's going to do something, but just not that much. It's almost not worth it. You know what I mean? So you might as well also know, like, for example, here for Samantha, you might as well just say, hey, okay, after maintenance, I might even spend a couple of weeks a couple months in a surplus, and then maybe cut. Okay, cool. Is it hard to think long term like that? Yes. Is it worth it? Yeah, I guarantee you that. And again, bulking, it sounds a little bit scarier than lean gaining, and maybe I should just use that term. But I just like to call things like what it is. You know what I mean? And last but not least, you're not going to look bulky all of a sudden. You're not going to look at a dumbbell and just gain fucking kilos of pounds of muscle mass. Like, no one accidentally got jacked. I told you, like, I'd spent 14 months, trying to gain as much muscle as possible. Afterwards, I revealed that, right? And I'm still very happy I did. But okay, there's a whole sport around looking jacked, right? Bodybuilding. People really go out of their way to put on as much muscle as possible and then get as lean as possible. Guess what? It's really fucking difficult. It's really difficult to put on an actual, like, a good amount of muscle. Now, that being said, you're not just gonna look bulky. And I've heard that, or I was going to say excuse, but I've heard that argument from, mostly female clients of like, hey, I don't want to look bulky, or, like, I don't want to gain too much. But you're not going to gain that much muscle. Like, it's not going to just come out of nowhere. You know what I mean? It really takes a lot of hard work. So as for toning, right, and lifting heavier, which you mentioned, I think maintenance, or let's call it like at least maintenance, right? It may be even followed by like a bulk if you want to. And this is not just towards Samantha, by the way, also just for anyone. But I think maintenance, at least, actually getting out of the dieting mindset, building some muscle, because you can absolutely build muscle at maintenance, is usually going to be a little bit slower. So I will say that you can recomp at maintenance, especially if you're slightly newer, meaning you can build some muscle, lose some body fat at the same time, but it's going to be pretty slow. So I will say this, because it's kind of like chasing 2 rabbits at once, right? If you do the other approach where you bulk and then reveal that, right? A lean gaining phase followed by a cut, which, by the way, doesn't have to be super long. And losing the body fat actually is much faster than the bulk, which is really cool. It's going to be beneficial for so many reasons, right, that we talked about today. Can you still lose fat? I wouldn't, like, that's not the goal anymore. That's not the goal. That's not the goal during a reverse diet, even though it can happen. That's not the goal at maintenance. That's not the goal in a bulk. But here's the cool thing. Once again, if we cut and we make that work count, right, we get shit done, we don't really have to worry about fat loss anymore. You know what I mean? Because after the initial block, or whatever we want to call it, of fat loss, we get most of the weight off, right? Anything beyond that is going to be because we want to. You know what I mean? When I lost 30 kilos back in 2013, right? That initial, 30 kilos, 60 pounds, basically, that was for health reasons. I had to lose that weight. You know what I mean? There was a clear benefit to that. Now it's kind of like, well, it's because I want to. I do bulks, I cuts, etc. because I like that. I like training. I like building muscle. I like pushing my body, right? And I also like revealing that. And it's okay to want to look jacked and lean, right? And a lot of people in our group want exactly that. And that's one of the main reasons you join us for, Now, one little side note that I do want to point out, which is something, people in our group, you're not going to run into this issue, but there is something to be said about people who put on too much muscle and actually start to run into issues then to where they get so big. And this is more common with people who do steroids and those type of things. But I think it's a good conversation to have real quick. There are people who can actually put on too much, right? Especially in bodybuilding when it's, with PEDs, especially there, right? You could actually run into heart issues because all of a sudden the body is almost like too big to keep up, if that makes sense. I just kind of want to throw that in as like a little side note. Like people in the group are not going to really run into that issue, but that's something to be said there. So altogether, we didn't really touch on how it looks for men versus women, and that's for a reason. It's fact, biologically, that men have more testosterone than women, which is funny because in 2023, like, you're not even allowed to say those type of things anymore. But biologically speaking, that is fact. Men, right, are typically going to put on some more muscle, but I don't think that's an important conversation to have because it's our own journey anyway. Like that's even from one dude to another or one female to the next, right? It doesn't fucking matter what someone else is able to achieve or not. What matters is what you do, and it's the work that you put in, right? And the phases that you go through. And let me tell you this, like, you can absolutely reach your goals. And I mean that, I target this, towards like everyone in this group. Like, you can absolutely reach your goals and get that body you want. Granted, it's a realistic goal, you know what I mean? And that includes, hey, knowing, okay, cool, well, I just spent years of struggling. Maybe we're gonna spend some at least a couple months like not dieting, right? And it takes time to change our habits, and it takes time to really fix things, if that makes sense. And the longer we've done things a certain way, the more difficult it gets. You know what I mean? But again, like, I don't want to make that the conversation. I really want you to just focus on your own thing. That goes for every single phase that we have you walk through. And to end this call with, because we're, at an hour right now, focus on the phase you're in and actually just make sure that you really serve your future self. If you are in the cut, if you're in the bulk, whatever it is, there's going to be moments where we feel like, like we want to have the short-term benefit, right? We want to have the social settings, etc. And yes, we teach you how to include those, but I can't say it is enough. But just make sure that you make the work count. You know what I mean? When you're in the bulk, when you're in a cut, when you're in a reverse diet, do the fucking work and make sure to not make too many little trade-offs just because in the short term you want something. Think about your future self and have a conversation with that person as well. And think about this, even meditate, journal, whatever, but think about this. What's that person going to feel proud of, right? Because that's something you want to think about. Like, that's the person you're trying to become. So talk to that person and see what they feel like. Are they currently looking at you being like, oh, I'm really fucking proud of that person of past me doing that work? Or would they feel like, well, I kind of half-assed that cut because I want to, have more drinks, or, you know what I mean? So that is a conversation that needs to be had as well. And that is that whatever phase we're in, anything that's not maintenance, make it count. When it is maintenance, make it count too, obviously. But I will say this, that it's a very forgiving season where it's way easier to be flexible. It's a window of a couple hundred calories. So it's much easier to maintain there. And it's much easier to practice flexibility and to move away from tracking, because that's literally part of what we should be doing. We're not going to have you track forever, but make it count. Every single phase, whether that's cutting, bulking, reverse dieting, those especially, but then at maintenance, right? At least after the transition, it's going to be much easier. So that's where you feel better. That's where you get the energy, get most out of your training, etc. Right? And that is also where long-term you're going to be living life. and you're going to be getting out of the dieting mindset, etc. So